Marcus Reed was hiding an eviction notice from his 10-year-old daughter when a wealthy woman knocked on his door and told him her dead mother had spent 11 years looking for him. She brought a sealed envelope, an old accident photo, and a secret from a freezing bridge Marcus had tried to forget. But what began as a debt became a search for a missing son, a town's buried shame, and the truth about a man everyone believed had walked away. By the time Marcus learned why she came, his daughter would defend him before the whole town. Before we go further, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I always wonder who is hearing these stories in the morning, late at night, or during a quiet break in the day. And if you enjoy emotional stories about family, secrets, justice, and the kind of truth that changes everything, subscribe to DAVIN Story so you do not miss the next one. Marcus Reed had learned to fold bad news small. That morning, he folded the eviction notice twice, then once more, and slid it behind a cereal box before his daughter came into the kitchen. The notice was still visible from the side, but only if someone looked closely. He hoped 10-year-old Nia would be too sleepy to notice. She noticed anyway. Nia had been noticing things for months. She noticed when the lights flickered because the bill was late. She noticed when her father said he was not hungry and pushed the last piece of toast onto her plate. She noticed the watered-down milk before the spoon even touched the cereal. But Nia only looked into the bowl, gave a small smile, and said, "It is okay, Daddy. I like it better this way." That broke something in Marcus more than any complaint could have. A child should not have to protect a grown man's feelings before school. He turned toward the sink so she would not see his face. Outside, October rain tapped against the cracked kitchen window of their small house in East Marlow, Pennsylvania. The neighborhood had once been full of steelworkers, church picnics, barbecues, and children on bikes. Now half the porches sagged, and the other half looked like they were waiting too. Marcus had been a paramedic once. Then the county cut contracts, the ambulance company folded, and his wife's illness swallowed every dollar they had saved. After Denise died, people came with casseroles for 2 weeks, then opinions for 2 years. They said Marcus should move on, work more, do better, smile more, pray harder. He had done all of it except move on. Moving on required somewhere to go. So he stayed in the little house with the leaky ceiling, took warehouse shifts when he could, fixed neighbors' furnaces for cash, and raised Nia with every piece of himself he still had left. The knock came just after 7. 3 slow knocks, not loud, but certain. Marcus froze with the dish towel in his hand. Nobody knocked that early unless they were bringing trouble. He thought of the eviction notice behind the cereal box and felt his stomach tighten. Nia looked up from her bowl. "Is that the bank?" Marcus forced a calm face. "No, baby. Finish eating." He crossed the cold floor in his socks, already preparing the words he had used too many times. "I need 1 more week. I am waiting on a check. My daughter is inside." But when he opened the door, no man in a cheap suit stood there. A black woman about 36 stood beneath a black umbrella, wearing a charcoal coat that looked warm enough for another life. A dark sedan idled at the curb behind her. She looked out of place on Maple Row, but not lost. "Are you Marcus Reed?" she asked. Her voice was careful, not cold. Marcus kept one hand on the door. "Depends who is asking. If this is about money, I do not have it. If you are here to take something, you will have to stand in line." The woman looked at him for a long moment, and instead of being offended, her expression softened. "My name is Ava Whitmore," she said. "My mother passed away last week. Before she died, she told me to find you. She said she owed you her life." Marcus stared at her. Rain rolled from the edge of her umbrella. "You have the wrong man." Ava reached into her coat and pulled out a thick cream envelope sealed with red wax. "I do not think I do." Then she looked past him toward the kitchen, where Nia sat very still. "May I come in?" Marcus should have said no. He had spent years keeping strangers from seeing how little they had left. But there was something in Ava's face that did not carry pity. It carried grief, and grief was the one language Marcus still trusted. He stepped back and let her inside. Ava did not wrinkle her nose at the damp smell in the hallway. She did not stare too long at the water stain on the ceiling or the patched blanket over the couch. She set her umbrella by the door, took off her gloves, and greeted Nia like she was entering a house that deserved respect. Nia came to stand beside her father, one hand gripping his sleeve. "Who is she?" Marcus put a hand over his daughter's shoulder. "This is Miss Whitmore. She came to talk to me about something from a long time ago." Nia looked at the sealed envelope. Is it bad? Ava answered before Marcus could. No, sweetheart. It is serious, but it is not bad. That answer made Nia trust her just enough to return to the counter, though she kept watching them. Marcus noticed Ava noticing that, too. Watchful children always recognized each other. Ava sat at the kitchen table. She placed the envelope down but did not push it toward him. Marcus respected that. People with money often believed money gave them the right to control the room. Ava seemed to be fighting against that instinct, or maybe she had never had it. My mother's name was Evelyn Whitmore, Ava said. 11 years ago, in February, she was in a car accident near the Hollow Creek Bridge. It was after midnight, snowing hard, the kind of cold that makes every sound feel far away. Marcus's hand slowly left the back of the chair. The memory did not arrive fully. It came in broken pieces. A bent guardrail, snow shining in headlights, a car down in the ravine, his own boots sliding on the icy bank, a woman trapped behind a crushed door, eyes wide with terror, whispering that she could not feel her legs. Marcus pulled out the chair and sat. I was not working that night. Ava nodded. That is why nobody could find you. You were off duty. You stopped because you saw the rail. Marcus looked toward the window, but what he saw was not the rain. It was snow. He had been driving home from his mother's apartment. His radio was off. His uniform jacket was in the back seat because he had been off the clock. He almost kept driving. Then he saw the black scrape marks, the broken rail, and a single red taillight glowing down in the dark like an eye. I climbed down, he said quietly. There was a woman. I could not get her out. The door was crushed, and the car was wedged sideways. I gave her my coat through the window. I kept talking so she would not close her eyes. His voice grew rough. I left when the rescue crew got there. You disappeared, Ava said. My mother never knew your name. Marcus shook his head. I was not supposed to be there. I had been suspended for arguing with a supervisor about unsafe rigs. If they knew I responded unofficially, they would have fired me before the layoffs did. Ava's eyes filled, but she held herself still. She lived because of you. Marcus looked down at his hands. I did not save her. The crew did. Ava leaned forward. No. The doctor said if she had fallen asleep in that cold, she might not have survived. You kept her awake. Nia had stopped eating completely. Marcus looked at her, wishing she had not heard any of this. Yet another part of him was grateful. For once, his daughter was hearing something about him that was not about failure, debt, or shame. My mother built Whitmore Freight after that accident, Ava said. She started with insurance money, one truck, and a stubbornness none of us could survive arguing with. She became rich, but she never stopped looking for the man who stayed with her in the snow. Marcus let out a quiet, bitter laugh. Rich people always say they looked for somebody after they already found them. Ava did not flinch. She hired investigators, filed public records requests, traced ambulance calls, looked at police reports, but you were never in the official record. The sealed envelope sat between them like a living thing. Marcus wanted to open it and wanted to throw it out the door. He had learned that gifts often had hooks buried inside them. But Ava's hands trembled when she touched it, and that made him listen. The envelope contains enough to clear your mortgage arrears, taxes, and the eviction filing, Ava said. My mother wrote the amount herself. She also wrote a letter. But the money is not why I drove 4 hours. Marcus looked up. Then why are you here? Ava opened the leather folder she had carried under her arm. Because my mother did not only leave a debt. She left an unfinished promise. And you, Mr. Reed, may be the only person left who can help me keep it. Marcus leaned back. I do not even know your family. No, Ava said. But you knew the other man who died that night. The kitchen went silent. Even the rain seemed to fade. Marcus looked at her as if the words had entered the room in a language he did not speak. What other man? Ava's face tightened. There was a second car below the bridge. It went down farther, on the opposite side of the ravine. The rescue team did not find it until after they reached my mother. The driver was already gone. Marcus stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. No, he said. There was one car. Ava's voice stayed soft. There were two. Marcus shook his head, anger rising because guilt was rising faster. Do not do that. Do not sit in my house and tell me I was kneeling in the snow beside one person while another man died close enough to hear me. Ava looked at him with tears running down her face now. My mother carried that same guilt for 11 years. She believed she caused the second car to crash. She believed she lived while a stranger died because she crossed the line on the bridge. Marcus gripped the counter until his knuckles whitened. He remembered wind. He remembered metal clicking in the cold. He remembered the trapped woman begging him not to leave her. But he did not remember another voice. That was the cruel part. If there had been another person, silence had hidden him better than distance ever could. Ava slid a copy of an old article across the table. Marcus did not want to look. He looked anyway. The print was grainy, the photo small. But he knew the face before his mind accepted it. Broad smile. Tired eyes. Work cap tilted back. A man from another life. His name was Clarence Bell, Ava said. Marcus sat down slowly, like his legs no longer trusted the floor. Clarence Bell taught me how to be a man, he whispered. He was my foreman at Marlowe Steel. Hired me when nobody else would. Gave me extra shifts after my mother got sick. He touched the edge of the article. They told us he moved to Cleveland. Said he left for better work. Everybody left back then, so nobody questioned it. His voice broke. He did not move to Cleveland. Ava shook her head. No. He died 40 yards from where you were. Marcus covered his mouth and turned away, but there was nowhere to hide in that kitchen. Nia slid off her stool and came to him. She wrapped both arms around his waist. He placed one hand on her head and closed his eyes. The past had found him, and it had not come alone. There is more, Ava said after a long silence. Marcus almost laughed because pain always seemed to bring relatives. Of course there is. Ava swallowed. Clarence had a son. His wife died 2 years after the accident. The insurance refused the claim. The pension never came through. Their son vanished from the records at 19. Marcus looked up. Darius. Ava's eyes sharpened. You remember him? Little boy. Used to come to the plant some Saturdays. Clarence would let him sit on a crate and draw while we worked. He called him DJ. Marcus rubbed his face. He would be grown now. He is 30, Ava said. My mother set aside a trust for him. A large one. But the estate has a deadline. We have 9 weeks to locate him before the money returns to the company foundation. The board wants the file closed. They think my mother's guilt made her reckless. Marcus stared at her. 9 weeks. 11 years late. A dead mentor. A lost son. And an envelope that could save his house sitting beside a secret that might swallow him whole. Why come to me, he asked. Because investigators can find records, Ava said. But records do not remember people. That sentence stayed with him. Records did not remember which church had chicken dinners on Fridays. Records did not remember who owed Clarence $20 in 2009. Records did not remember cousins, old nicknames, factory bus routes, corner stores, or the way a town hid its wounds under gossip. Marcus pushed the envelope back toward her. Ava looked surprised. I cannot take this yet. My mother wanted you to have it. Then I will. But not before we find Clarence's boy. Nia looked up at him. Daddy, can we do both? Marcus looked at his daughter and knew she had inherited Denise's heart. We can try, he said. But trying was not enough for Nia. She stepped closer to Ava. If his daddy died and nobody told him, then he might think his daddy left him. Her voice became small. That is the worst thing to think about somebody who loved you. Marcus looked at the eviction notice behind the cereal box. He thought of all the ways children blame themselves for adult disappearances. He thought of Nia waiting beside hospital beds, whispering to a mother who could no longer answer. Then he looked back at Clarence Bell's picture. That was the moment the story changed. Marcus had begun the morning as a man trying to keep his house. By noon, he had become a man trying to return a father to a son, even if that return came 11 years too late. The first week brought nothing but dead ends. Ava drove from Philadelphia every Saturday, leaving boardrooms and estate lawyers behind to sit at Marcus's wobbly kitchen table. They made lists of names from the old plant. Marcus called numbers that no longer worked. Ava pulled records that led to empty addresses. Nia became their unofficial secretary. She wrote dates on sticky notes, drew lines between names, and taped everything to the kitchen wall. Marcus told her she did not have to help. Nia said, I know. That is why it counts. Ava looked away when she heard that. The town noticed the black sedan before it noticed the reason. East Marlowe had always been good at suspicion. By the second visit, people were whispering that Marcus had found a rich woman to save him. By the third, they were saying worse. The truth had not arrived yet, so gossip filled the room first. At church, 2 women stopped talking when Nia walked past. At the grocery store, a cashier asked Marcus if he was doing better now, in a voice that made better sound dirty. Marcus kept his head down because he had spent years surviving by not giving people more of himself to bruise. Then came the diner. Marcus took Nia to Lenny's on a Friday afternoon because Ava had insisted he use a small part of the envelope for normal life. He still had not cashed it, but he had taken $20 from a furnace repair job and promised Nia a grilled cheese and fries. They walked in, and the diner softened into silence. Marcus felt it before he saw it. Men at the counter glanced, then looked away. A waitress who had known him since high school smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. Marcus guided Nia to a booth near the window. They had barely sat down when Ray Coleman turned from the counter. Ray had once worked under Clarence, too, but hard years had made him mean in the way scared men become mean. "Hey, Marcus," he called. "That rich lady still visiting your house? Or did she finally figure out you got nothing worth buying?" A few men laughed. Nia's face changed. Marcus reached for her hand. "We are leaving." But Nia pulled her hand back and stood in the booth. Her voice shook, but it carried through the diner. "My dad is not using anybody. He helped somebody before I was even born, and nobody even knew." The diner went quiet. Ray's smile slipped. Nia kept going, tears standing in her eyes. "You all talk like you know everything, but you do not know what he did. You do not know what he lost. You just like making people feel small because it makes you feel taller." Marcus could not move. His 10-year-old daughter had said what he had swallowed for years. Ray looked down at his coffee. The waitress stared at the floor. Nobody apologized. That was not how East Marlow worked. But nobody laughed again either. Marcus carried the food out in a box they did not eat. In the truck, Nia broke down. "I did not want them talking about you," she sobbed. Marcus held her as best he could across the console. "I know, baby. But I do not know the whole story, Daddy. I defended you, but I do not know all of it." That sentence cut him deeper than Ray ever could. His daughter had stood in front of adults with only half the truth because he had been too afraid to claim the rest. That night, after Nia fell asleep, Marcus called Ava. His voice was steady in a way it had not been for years. "Bring everything tomorrow," he said. "Every record, every name, everything your mother left out. My daughter defended me today, and I could not even tell her the full truth because I have been hiding from it, too." Ava was quiet. Then she said, "Marcus, once you know everything, you may wish you did not." The next morning, Ava arrived without the driver. She came in an ordinary rental car and carried 2 boxes instead of 1 folder. Marcus noticed the difference. She was not visiting anymore. She was joining the search. Nia spent the day with Denise's sister, and for the first time, the kitchen belonged completely to the dead. Ava laid out Evelyn Whitmore's notes. There were maps, letters, investigator reports, hospital records, insurance denials, and 1 page in Evelyn's handwriting that simply said, "Find Clarence Bell's son. Do not let my life be paid for with his silence." Marcus read that line 3 times. "Your mother thought she owed him because she survived." Ava nodded. "And because the system did what systems do. It counted what could be counted and buried what was inconvenient." Marcus looked at Clarence's photo. "They denied his pension?" "The company claimed he was not on duty," Ava said. "The insurer claimed weather was the cause. The family had no money to fight. His wife sold the house. Darius bounced between relatives, then shelters, then nothing." Marcus closed his eyes. Clarence gave that company 28 years. The anger came clean this time. Not wild. Useful. Marcus had known men like Clarence, men who gave their backs, lungs, knees, and time to companies that called them family right up until the bill came due. Then suddenly there were policies, clauses, signatures, and doors that would not open. They started with the plant. Marlow Steel had been closed for 6 years, its windows boarded, its parking lot cracked with weeds. Marcus and Ava stood outside the fence while rain gathered on the old sign. "I used to come through that gate before sunrise," Marcus said. Clarence would already be there. A security guard tried to send them away until Marcus recognized him as a former shipping clerk named Willis. Willis remembered Clarence. More importantly, he remembered Clarence's wife, Marlene, and a cousin who had taken Darius in after she got sick. "Try Mount Zion on Braddock Avenue," Willis said. Marlene sang there. Mount Zion led to an old choir director. The choir director led to a funeral program. The funeral program led to a woman named Aunt Lottie, who had died 3 years earlier. Her apartment had been cleared out, but her landlord remembered forwarding mail to Pittsburgh, then to Youngstown, then nowhere. Every lead opened like a door and became a hallway ending in brick. Weeks passed. The eviction deadline paused because Ava's lawyer intervened, but Marcus still had not cashed the check. Ava stopped arguing about it. She had begun to understand that pride was not the same as stubbornness when a man had lost nearly everything else. Nia kept the wall of notes alive. On the 43rd day, she circled one name in purple marker. "Everybody keeps saying Darius moved because he had nobody," she said. "But what if he changed his name because he thought the Bell name was the reason bad things happened?" Marcus stared at the wall. It was the kind of thought adults miss because they are too busy being practical. Ava immediately searched alternate surnames connected to Marlene's side. One result appeared from an old warehouse injury claim in Ohio. Darius Bell had signed as Darius Lane. They drove to Ohio the next morning. The warehouse was still there, but Darius was not. A supervisor remembered him as quiet, reliable, and gone after a fight with a manager who accused him of stealing time. He was not a thief, the supervisor said. He just had no patience for being treated like one. The supervisor gave them an old emergency contact number. Disconnected. But the area code led Marcus to a rooming house near Akron. The rooming house had burned down 2 years earlier. Standing outside the empty lot, Ava pressed both hands to her face. "We are running out of time." Marcus wanted to tell her they would find him. Instead, he told the truth. "Then we stopped wasting it." They drove back to East Marlow in silence. That night, Ava received a call from the estate attorney. Marcus heard only pieces, but enough. 7 days. No extension. Board vote scheduled. Ava ended the call and sat in the truck without moving. "They are waiting for me to fail," she said. "They think if the deadline passes, they can say they honored my mother's wishes and return the fund to corporate charity." Marcus looked at her. Charity photographs better than justice. The breakthrough came from shame. Ray Coleman, the same man from the diner, knocked on Marcus's door 2 days later. He stood on the porch with his cap in his hands and would not look Marcus in the eye. "My sister used to work intake at a men's shelter in Cleveland," he said. Marcus said nothing. Ray cleared his throat. "She remembered a Darius Lane. Said he came through maybe 4 years ago. Quiet guy. Fixed things around the place. She said he talked once about a father who ran off to Ohio, which is funny because that was the lie we all believed." Marcus took the paper Ray held out. There was a shelter name, a caseworker, and a possible forwarding address. Ray swallowed. "I was wrong in the diner." The words looked painful in his mouth. Marcus nodded once. "Yes, you were." Ray looked up, expecting more. Marcus gave him nothing else. The caseworker remembered Darius immediately. "He was not easy to help," she said over the phone. "Not because he was bad, because he believed help always turned into humiliation." Marcus understood that so deeply he had to sit down. The caseworker gave them one last lead, a freight depot outside Harrisburg. Marcus drove alone. Ava wanted to come, but he said no. A man should not learn the truth about his father from a stranger with estate papers. Ava accepted it. Before he left, Nia handed him Clarence's copied photo. "Show him his daddy's face," she said. "Not just the paperwork." The freight depot sat behind a row of gas stations and chain hotels. Marcus found Darius Lane working beside a loading bay, lean and tired, with Clarence Bell's eyes set in a harder face. He was 30, but life had given him the posture of someone older. When Marcus said his name, Darius turned slowly. "Who was asking?" Marcus heard himself from the morning Ava arrived and almost smiled at the painful symmetry. "My name is Marcus Reed. I knew your father." Darius's face closed. "Then you wasted a trip." Marcus followed him to a coffee shop across the road. Darius only agreed because Marcus said Clarence's name again, and anger sometimes creates the same opening as hope. They sat in a corner booth while trucks groaned past the window. Darius did not remove his work gloves. "You came to tell me he was a good man?" Darius asked. "People love doing that. They tell you somebody was good after that somebody leaves you holding the damage." Marcus set the old photo on the table. "He did not leave you." Darius's jaw tightened. "Do not start." Marcus slid the accident report beside the photo. "Your father died on Hollow Creek Bridge 11 years ago. Snowstorm. 2-car crash. The town thought he moved to Cleveland because that was easier than admitting nobody checked hard enough. He was trying to get home." Darius stared at the report. At first, nothing happened. Then his eyes began moving too quickly, as if reading faster could change the words. "No," he said. "My mother would have told me." Marcus's voice broke. "Your mother may not have known the full truth either. People failed both of you." Darius stood up so fast the table shook. You do not get to walk in here and rewrite the only thing I survived believing. Marcus stood too, but he kept his hands open. I am not rewriting it. I am giving you back the part they stole. Darius looked at the photo again. His anger cracked, and under it was a grief so old it had become part of his bones. Did he talk about me? He asked. The question was barely sound. Marcus nodded. Every Saturday you came to the plant. He acted like the whole place was lucky to see you. He remembered those Saturdays? Darius asked. Marcus almost smiled through tears. He carried your drawings in his lunchbox. Said you were going to build something better than steel because you had too much imagination to waste in that mill. Darius sat down slowly, like the truth had taken his knees. For 30 years, Darius had lived as a man abandoned by his father. In one afternoon, he became a son whose father had been taken. That did not heal him. Healing is not that quick, but it moved the knife. It changed the wound from shame to mourning, and mourning was something he could finally hold. Marcus called Ava from the parking lot. He only said, "We found him." On the other end, Ava made a sound that was almost a sob and almost a prayer. Then Marcus drove Darius back to East Marlow, not because of the money, but because Darius asked to see where his father had been remembered. The town was waiting without admitting it. Willis came from the old plant. The choir director came from Mount Zion. Even Ray stood near the back with his cap in his hands. Darius stepped into the community center, guarded and overwhelmed, and saw a table covered with pieces of Clarence Bell's life. There were work badges, photographs, an old union card, a church program, and a dented metal lunchbox Dell Jenkins had kept after buying a box of plant leftovers at auction. Dell opened it with trembling hands. Inside, beneath a rusted thermos lid, was a folded piece of construction paper. Darius unfolded it carefully. The drawing was faded, the crayon lines soft with age. Two stick figures stood in front of a gray building. One tall, one small. At the bottom, in uneven child letters, it said, "Me and Daddy at work." Darius covered his mouth. He remembered drawing it. He remembered Clarence laughing and saying it belonged in the lunchbox forever. Darius had forgotten that moment because pain had trained him to forget anything that proved he had once been loved. But Clarence had remembered. Clarence had carried it every day until the night he died. That was the moment Darius finally cried. Not quietly, not politely. He folded over the drawing while Marcus held one shoulder and Ava held the other. Nobody in that room looked away. East Marlow had done enough looking away. This time, the town stood still and witnessed what the truth cost. The trust reached Darius 2 days before the deadline. Ava forced the board to honor every word of her mother's will. When one director suggested a smaller payout and a public scholarship in Clarence's name, Ava looked across the table and said, "You do not get to turn a debt into marketing." Marcus finally cashed the envelope, but not until Darius signed his papers. The house on Maple Row was saved. The bank withdrew the filing. The first thing Marcus bought was not furniture, clothes, or a television. He bought real milk, fresh fruit, and the biggest box of cereal Nia had ever seen. Nia cried when she saw it, which made Marcus cry, which made Darius stand awkwardly in the doorway pretending not to. Then Nia handed him a bowl and said, "Family eats together here." Darius looked at Marcus. Marcus nodded. So Darius sat down. Weeks passed, and the house changed. Not because it became fancy. It did not. The ceiling still needed work, the porch still leaned, and the kitchen table still wobbled unless someone folded a napkin under one leg. But the silence changed. It was no longer the silence of two people trying not to worry each other. Darius rented the spare room at first, saying it was temporary. Nia ignored that and labeled a drawer for him with masking tape. Marcus found him fixing the back steps one Saturday without being asked. Ava visited on Sundays, sometimes with documents, sometimes with groceries, and eventually with nothing but herself. At Nia's school, the story arrived before Darius did. Some parents apologized badly. Others pretended they had never repeated rumors. Nia accepted none of it too easily, which made Marcus proud. She had learned forgiveness from her mother, but caution from him, and both had their place. The principal invited Marcus to speak at a community assembly about kindness. Marcus refused because he hated speeches. Darius surprised everyone by saying he would go. He stood in front of fourth graders, parents, and teachers with the old drawing in his hand. For a moment, he could not speak. Then he told them about a father who never left, a son who believed the wrong story, a woman who spent her final years trying to correct it, and a poor man who climbed into the cold twice. Once for a stranger in a ravine, and once for a stranger's son in the dark. He did not make Marcus sound perfect. That mattered. He said Marcus had been scared, broke, proud, angry, and tired. Then he looked at Nia in the front row and said, "But courage is not the absence of fear. Sometimes courage is a little girl standing in a diner telling grown people to stop lying." The room stood for her before it stood for anyone else. Nia looked embarrassed, then pleased, then overwhelmed. Marcus clapped with one hand over his mouth. Ava, standing near the back, cried silently. She had finished her mother's promise, but something else had happened. She had found her own purpose inside it. Before we reach the final part of this story, I want to ask you something honestly. If you were Darius, and you found out after 11 years that your father had not abandoned you, would that truth bring you peace, or would it make the lost years hurt even more? Tell me in the comments, because I think different hearts will answer this in different ways. That evening, Ava drove to the cemetery where Evelyn Whitmore had been buried. She stood beside the fresh stone as the sun went down behind the trees. For years, Ava had resented her mother's obsession with unpaid debts. She thought Evelyn had spent too much of her life chasing ghosts instead of being present with the living. Now she understood. Evelyn had not been chasing ghosts. She had been refusing to let powerful people decide whose pain counted. She had been teaching her daughter that money did not make a person honorable. What mattered was whether you used what you had to repair what should never have been broken. "I found him, Mom," Ava whispered. "And you were right. It was never just about guilt." She wiped her face. It was about remembering people the world found easy to forget. Then she placed a copy of Darius's childhood drawing beside the stone and stood there until the sky turned dark. A year later, East Marlow looked the same from a distance, but not to the people who lived there. The old community center reopened a job training program in Clarence Bell's name, funded by Darius and Ava together. Marcus taught emergency response classes there twice a week. Ray Coleman volunteered maintenance and never mentioned the diner. Darius did not become suddenly healed or perfectly happy. Real life does not work that way. Some mornings, grief still hit him like weather. But now he had somewhere to bring it. He had a room in a small house, a little girl who called him Uncle D, and a lunchbox on the mantel that proved love had traveled farther than pain. Marcus kept the eviction notice, too. Nia asked him once why he did not throw it away. He told her some papers remind you what almost happened, and some remind you what did not. She thought about that, then taped a new note beside it in purple marker. The note said, "We stayed." Marcus looked at those two words for a long time. He had spent years believing survival was quiet, lonely, and temporary. But his daughter had named it better. They had stayed. Through grief, shame, hunger, gossip, and fear, they had stayed long enough for the truth to find them. One Sunday evening, Marcus, Nia, Darius, and Ava sat on the porch while the streetlights flickered on. No black sedan waited at the curb anymore. Ava drove herself now and parked in the cracked driveway like she belonged there. Nia sat between Marcus and Darius, swinging her feet. Ava looked at Marcus. "My mother said she had two debts. One to you, and one to Clarence's son." Marcus watched Darius help Nia untangle a bracelet she had made from yarn. "Sounds like she paid both." Ava shook her head gently. "No, I think she started something. We are the ones who have to keep paying it forward." Marcus thought about the bridge, the cold, the woman trapped in the car, the man he had not known was dying nearby, and the son who had lived 11 years inside a lie. He used to think one decent act was small if it did not change the world. Now he knew better. A good thing done in the dark does not always come back quickly. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it returns wounded, carrying other people's grief with it. Sometimes it arrives at your door wearing a charcoal coat, holding an envelope, and asking you to become brave again. Later that night, Marcus found Nia asleep on the couch with Clarence's old drawing in her lap. She had been allowed to hold it for one evening, under Darius's nervous supervision. Marcus carefully lifted it from her hands and saw she had added one small sentence on the back in pencil. It said, "Found family counts." Marcus smiled through tears. Then he placed the drawing back on the mantel, beside the eviction notice and Nia's purple note. 3 pieces of paper. One showed what almost took their home. One showed what love had carried. One showed what they had become. Marcus covered his daughter with a blanket and turned off the lamp. Outside, the street was quiet. Not empty, just quiet. For the first time in years, the quiet did not feel like waiting for something bad. It felt like rest. And that is where Marcus Reed's story ends. A poor father who once thought his kindness had vanished into the snow learned that nothing done with a true heart is ever completely lost. If this story moved you, tell me what part stayed with you the most. Was it Nia defending her father, Darius learning the truth, or Evelyn's final promise? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to DAVIN Story for more emotional stories like this.